Welcome to another handy dandy how-to on the Nspire with your friend Mrs. Taylor. Today we are going to look at how to make dot plots and histograms on the Nspire. We need to start by entering a list of data, and if you recall, you go to Control Doc to add a lists and spreadsheet page. I've already done that, so I'm going to push Escape, which is a nice way to get out of a menu if you don't want it. I'm going to go back here. If you go to page 67 in your textbook and look at problem number 17 that says horsepower, this is where I got the data. So I'd like you in a moment to pause your video and enter the data. Just a tip is you can use the down arrow key to move to the next cell down, just like you can use the enter key. But I found if I keep my left hand on the down arrow and my right hand entering the data, it tends to go a lot faster. So just a little tip for you there. So pause the video and enter the data, and then you can rejoin me. Okay, next step. We're going to do Control Doc and add a data and statistics page. Go down to the lower box on your screen, click to add a variable, and we're going to push our variable HPR, horsepower, and notice it automatically turns into a dot plot. Now the dot plot isn't perfectly straight because we have too many dots of data crowded into a small space, and that's just because the screen is only so wide on the Nspire. So a better graph here would be to make a histogram. So if you go to Menu, you can change your plot type to histogram. And notice all it does is stack the bars into nice histogram shape. Now sometimes there are too many bars in the histogram that the Nspire initially draws, and I like to do what's called change the bin width, make the bars a little wider so there are fewer bars. A good rule of thumb is 8 to 10 bars. There are two ways to do this. One of them is to go to Control Menu, which looks, and when you do this, I think it only has 3 choices. My computer software is slightly different, but you want to go to your bin settings and go to equal bin width. And notice the bin is 5, so maybe change it to 10. By the way, alignment just tells you where the left-hand side of the first bar starts, and it starts at 0.5 so that none of the data values land on the edge of a bar, because that can be kind of confusing. That's why they use the 0.5. So I'm going to change my bin width to 10. Notice that one problem we have here now is that the bins are a little, or the height of the bar doesn't fit on the graph anymore, and it's a little bit over to the side too much too. So I'm going to do change my window settings. Go to Window Settings under Menu, and change my X max to maybe a little bigger. Maybe make that like 164. And my Y max looks like it needs to be a little bigger. I'm not sure how much bigger it needs to be, so maybe I'll just make it 12. I'm not really sure. Okay, well that was probably a little more than I needed to. So that's a way you can make some adjustments. Now another way to make adjustments on the Nspire is to actually use the little hand and the touchpad. So if I want to, for example, drag my axis, I hover the cursor over the axis till I see this little symbol here, hold down until the hand shuts. Let me do this again. And then I can drag up or down as I want to adjust my axes. I can do the same thing with the bin width. Now you have to be careful not to hover just the hand over, because all that does is select one bin and allows you to drag the bin, which is not what you want to do. You want to wait till you see the symbol that shows like a margin change. Grab the hand, and then you can adjust the bin width by dragging your hand. Now, to let go of the hand on the calculator, you want to push the escape button, and then that takes the hand off, and then you're done. Now when you drag by hand, though, you don't necessarily get nice bin widths. If you look here, this number tells me the left hand and the right hand margins of my bin and how many points are in the bin. That's really not a nice number, so it's a good thing to maybe do a quick overview to kind of decide about the size of your bin width, but it probably works better to do your bin settings using the menu. And so go back to 10. Anytime you want to get out of something, you could try escape, and if you want to undo something, you do control escape for an undo button. So there is a histogram. We've done a dot plot, a histogram. Now there's a couple variations of things you can do with a histogram. If you do control menu again, you can choose, I'm sorry, not control menu, I will escape. If you do menu, wrong again, control menu is right. So escape out of here. Control menu. Once again, when you do control menu, you may not get exactly the same choices I have here, but what you want to do is go to scale. Scale gives you different options for the y-axis. Right now it's frequency, which counts just how many of each data value are in the bar. If we go to percent, then we get what's called a relative frequency histogram, where we know the percent of data that's in each bar. And if you remember earlier, I mentioned that especially if you're comparing two sets of data, you always want to use percents. So this is very useful. The third option under scale was a density. Now the only thing difference between the percent and density is density gives it as a fraction of 1. So here we see that we have 0.21 or 21% of the area. When you're doing a density graph, all of the areas total add up to 1. Just like when you're doing percent, they add up to 100%. That's the difference. So if we go back to scale, notice it always gives you the two options that you're not using. So I could go back to frequency, and then I have just the number of data values. One more graph that your calculator makes with quantitative data that we're not actually going to talk about until chapter 5 is the box plot. So if you go to menu again and plot type, you'll see a box plot, and it makes a box plot really quickly. And I love how the little dots turn into the graphs. That's really cool. So there you go, quantitative graphs on histogram. Oops, meant to say, there we go, quantitative graphs on the Nspire. Have a nice evening.